when he said that, when he was like, why does this guy even care? And then the general was just like, oh, I don't trust this kid, like blah blah blah. That's when it hit me. I was like, it's fucking Bruno Mannheim's son. So look out for that. Like you heard it here first that this kid is gonna be Bruno Mannheim's son. I tried to tell y'all. I knew that was his kid. Superman and Lois, episode 7, Forever and Always starts. What's good, everybody? Superman and Lois, episode 7, Forever and Always. And it's your boy Icon who called it, who dialed it up. But we'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk about some Superman and Lois before I take my victory lap around the square circle. So now this episode starts. It starts with Lois, who's going through chemo and she's not having a good time. Like, the chemo was affecting her, like, really bad, and she's going through the rough stages. The boys aren't handling it very well, and there's a lot of back talk and a lot of craziness, and then Jonathan's just like, oh, they're not telling us something, and then they end up going to the Fortress of Solitude to get information from her grandmama, from their grandmama about why her grandmother can't save Lois, and then Jonathan gets into an argument with his holographic grandmother, and then Clark shows up, and then he's just like, stop badgering your grandmother and get your asses out of here, and then they go back home, and now, like, Jonathan's all crazy. So Superman and Lois, Clark, there was no Superman in this episode, like calling it Superman and Lois. Clark Kent to the rescue. So Clark and Lois, they go down for her treatment. They're down for her treatment. They're talking to Pia. While they're having a conversation with Pia, Clark decides that because Lois is incapacitated because she's going through her treatment, he'll pick up the mantle as ace reporter Clark Kent, which also solidified the fact that we weren't going to get any Superman. And he actually went to go talk to Bruno Mannheim directly to follow up on Lois's investigation. Meanwhile, Lois is having a conversation with Pia. And here's where we get the Bruno Mannheim backstory. A little old Arrow, with the flashback. So we get the Bruno Mannheim backstory about how we find out that he and Pia, like Bruno Mannheim and Pia, like they both knew each other since they were kids growing up. Pia ended up working for the mob, and then Bruno Mannheim came in. He was trying to get all the local gangs and all the businesses together because he was trying to take over and, fix their part of town and like rebuild their town. He spends the whole episode confessing his love, to Pia, and then she's just like, oh, things are different, it's not going to be the same. And then he's just like, so what? He's like, I love you, and no matter what happens, I'll always be there for you. So then in the end, when he's faced with, because Bruno Mannheim, he did the whole thing where not only did he try to steal Pia from the mob guy, he also tried to talk to his henchmen. He spoke to each one of his individual hench people. And then like the mob guy found out, and then he told Pia to kill all of them. And I was just like, okay, so she's probably going to pull out a gun and shoot everybody except Bruno. But then she ended up like doing the canary cry of all things. And I was just like, wait, she has superpowers? I didn't see that one coming either, because I know when she was wearing the suit, when she had attacked John Henry Irons, she used like her sonic wave to try to kill him or whatever, but I didn't think she herself was a meta. So apparently like P is a meta, and she has meta abilities, and she used her meta abilities to kill every single person that went against, like the mob boss. And then when it came time to kill Bruno Mannheim, she couldn't do it because she secretly loved him. And then she killed the mob boss, and that's how Bruno Mannheim took over along with him and his wife. And I guess somewhere in there, John Henry Irons of their Earth was investigating, and then Pia killed him too. So now Clark is talking to him. And it was crazy because, to be honest with you, like, although because the thing is, it actually makes Pia look more like the villain than Bruno Mannheim, because the whole time we're looking at Bruno Mannheim like, you're the bad guy, and his wife's actually the killer. His wife even said to him, because the two of them had went on a dinner date, and she said to him, she was like, oh, I've done things, and you won't be proud of the things that I've done, and you'll look at me different. So I'm just like, it's really not him. Like, it's like, in a weird way, his wife is actually the bad guy, and Bruno is kind of like the victim, the do-good or whatever, but hey, that's what it is. So that's it. So the two of them, like, so, we do the flashbacks, and we see how the two of them got together, and how he started the empire to rebuild the South Side. Lois is now in chemo talking to Pia, and then she had said to Pia, she was just like, hey, listen, she's like, you've been doing your treatment here for a while. What's Bruno Mannheim like? And then she was just like, well, I never met him, lying through her teeth. And then Lois was just like, that doesn't even make sense, because how have you not met him when you've been getting your treatment here, for X amount of years? And then she was like, plus, you took me to that restaurant like 2 episodes ago, and his picture was hanging up all over the restaurant. So she was like, it doesn't make sense that you would never meet him. And then Pia got defensive. She got upset. She took her treatment thingy, and then she like rolled away. She went and sat on the other side of the room, and she told Lois, she was like, don't follow me. And I'm like, well, shit, now you really look guilty. But then Lois felt bad because she said that ever since she had like the chemotherapy, her gut feeling as ace reporter, Lois Lane has been off, and she doesn't know how to get it. She doesn't know if she can trust her gut because she said that things have been a little off, and then she feels bad because she hurt Pia's feelings. Clark goes down to Bruno Mannheim. He has a conversation with Bruno Mannheim, and then he's just like, oh, with the experiments that you did on people, like how far would you go, and then he was just like, I'm trying to save my people, Mr. Kent. He's like, anybody would do the same to save their people. And he was like, yeah, but specifically cancer. He was like, yeah, he's like, because lots of people catch cancer at an alarming rate. And then he was just like, your wife is in my facility right now getting treatment because she has cancer. Wouldn't you do everything possible to save your wife? And then that's when it hit Clark. He was just like, shit, somebody personally who has cancer. He's like, that's why you're going so hard. He said, this is extremely personal for you, which is why you're going so hard to try to save her. He said, somebody who has cancer. And then Bruno ain't say nothing. So then Lois later on, she went and apologized. And then Pia was like, I thought I told you not to follow me. And then that's when Lois apologized. And she was like, listen, I'm sorry for prying. But she said, listen, she was like, I really like you as a friend and not just a cancer friend. She was like, I want to be like real friends. And then Pia was just like, oh, it wasn't supposed to be this way. You and I weren't supposed to be friends and everything. And then she was just like, why do you say that? And then she's just like, don't judge me. But, but here comes my husband, because he was with Clark having the meeting. So then when Clark and Bruno Mannheim came back upstairs, that's when Pia introduced Lois to Bruno, like, this is my husband. And then Lois just looked dumbfounded. She was like, Lois even said, she was like, I don't know what to say. She was like, I don't understand. And then he was just like, she said every single, Pia told her, she said every single thing he did, whatever you're accusing him of, whatever you're coming after him for, every single thing he did was done for the sole purpose of trying to save my life. And then that's when Bruno was just like, well, now you have the information and do with it what you will. And I'm sorry, they made me like him. like I understand Bruno Mannheim is supposed to be the bad guy. He's supposed to be the villain. He's doing horrible experiments. It's like this whole episode made me like him. It's like, now, because Lois even said it later. She was just like, she said at first I was going after like this ruthless tyrant and this mob boss and this crime boss. She said, now I can't see that. She said, all I see is this loving husband that's going to do everything to save his wife. And I was like, yeah, that kind of sucks now because we can't look at him the same way. And then they even went on the roof, like the staff, like the hospital staff went on the roof. Lois and Clark, Bruno, Pia, and a couple of other patients. They went upstairs because Pia had finished her cancer treatment. They went upstairs to ring the bell and so they can say screw cancer, because you can't say fuck on the CW because it's supposed to be fuck cancer. But they said screw cancer, and then Pia gave a speech, and then now Lois is all fucked up because she don't know what to do because she doesn't want to take this man down who's trying to save his wife. So then they go back home. They're completely dumbfounded when they go back home. And then when they get home, the boys show up in Boston because they went sneaking through Lois's stuff and they found her will testament that she was trying to do a few episodes back that Clark didn't want to have any part of. And they were just like, oh, but there's actually this one a little further, because when Jonathan came outside, he was like, Mom, you said nothing was the matter. He was like, but this is a will and testament. And he was just like, yo, you wrote goodbye letters. And I was like, damn. I was like, she wrote goodbye letters? And then that's when, like the Clark and Lois had to sit them down, and then Jonathan was still like, he was like, oh, you don't know if she'll survive. And then, they had the talk, and then they smoothed things over, and the boys felt better. And I guess at the end of the day, the whole thing is they just, especially Jonathan specifically, he just wants Clark, Clark more so than Lois, but he just wants Clark to acknowledge the fact that something is like legitimately wrong with Lois, and there is a strong possibility she might not make it, which is why we need to examine the Kryptonian, biology or physiology. And then that's when Clark said, he said, first of all, we don't want to do that because we don't know, what effect it'll have on your mother. And then he said, plus, if we come up with a cure for your mother to save cancer, we now have a moral obligation to share that with the rest of the world. And if we share this miracle cure for cancer with the rest of the world, how are we going to explain how we got it? Like, because then he's going to have to be like, yo, I'm Superman. You know what I'm saying? We got it from the Forge of Solitude. And he was just like, the world's not ready for that yet. It's going to cause all these problems. So let's just pray that her chemo, therapy, her treatment works, and then that she survives the treatment. And obviously she will, because the show's called Superman and Lois, so he ain't going to kill Lois Lane. But things are a little interesting now because, like, she knows the truth now. And now it's up to Lois to decide what she does now that because she wants to be friends with Pia. Like, she really likes Pia as a friend, but, Bruno Mannheim is the big bad, is the big bad evil person. And Lois is conflicted now because she's like, do I take this guy down, or do I actually, like, give him his flowers for trying to save his wife who has cancer just like me? Now, meanwhile, back on the rest of Smallville, so Lana and Sarah and Sophie, because she was there. She was at the diner. They're at the diner having lunch or brunch or whatever. And for the love of God, Chrissy walked in, and I couldn't stop laughing. Chrissy tried to do the adult thing and tell Lana like, listen, it just happened and nothing went on behind your back, so you don't have to worry. And then Lana was just like, no, it's okay, it's okay. And then as soon as she says that, the waitress at the diner shows up, and then she's like, egg whites with extra gravy and toast, and that was like Kyle's favorite breakfast, and everybody knew that, and that shit was awkward as fuck, and I loved every minute of it. And then that's when she was just, and then Chrissy was just like, well, Lana, she was like, well, you have a good day. And then here goes Sarah. Oh, we know you already did. And I do have to say this, kudos to Lana, because she checked that immediately. She even said to Sarah, she was like, don't ever do that again. And then she was just like, Mom. And then this is where Sarah pissed me off, because she was like, Mom, she's 10 years younger than Dad, like that's gross. And then it was in that moment right there where Sarah showcased immaturity and her stupidity. Jordan, please do not go out with this girl, because she actually doesn't understand how life works. So and then they were just like, then I was like, wait a minute, I was like, Chrissy's 10 years younger than, never mind. So I'm not gonna say nothing. Anyway, so then later on, Chrissy ends up coming to Kyle's house because Sarah and Kyle were supposed to go to a movie together, and Chrissy was supposed to come along as a way for them, for the two of them to get to know each other. Sarah was just like, no. She's like, I don't want to go out to the movies with my dad's hookup. And then that's when Chrissy was like, look, bitch, she was like, I understand it sucks that your dad is dating, but I know how you feel. I've been through it. And just because, your dad decided to move on because your mom divorced him, that doesn't give you the right to be a total bitch. And then Kyle had canceled the movie because he got stuck at work. And then Sarah felt bad, and she was just like, look, she's like, you and I can still go and get to know each other. So the two of them end up going down to the movie, and then I was just like, all right, that's cool. Like Sarah is slowly winning some cool points back. So they go down to the movie. Meanwhile, now the black people are back, and when I say the black people, I mean all the black people. I know we have black people in this episode. We have the Manheim family, but for the love of God, the seasoned regular black people of the Irons family, God, they're back on the show. But they did give a reason for why John wasn't on the show, because when Bruno had threatened his family down in New Orleans, he basically went down to New Orleans to make sure the family was okay and to set them up with security and all this other stuff. I forgot all about that, so that actually made perfect sense of why the character wasn't on the show. So then now they're getting ready for a lunch date because good old Mateo's coming over. Mateo's coming over for a lunch date. And then that's when John was just like, look, he's like, it's all gravy. He's like, I'm a cool dad. And then when Mateo shows up, and then he saw how Mateo was looking at his daughter, he completely lost his shit and started giving him the bad boys 2 treatment. So he was like, what's your intentions with my daughter? And your parents are okay with you coming all the way over here from Metropolis. And he was like, how much you bench press, boy? And then it was just like this whole big thing. Natalie got upset, and then she was just like, thanks for ruining lunch, Dad. And then the two of them went to the same movie that Sarah and Chrissy went to. So they go down to the movie, Mateo does, he's the perfect man and with the perfect stuff, and like the two of them finally end up kissing, and then they go see the movie. While they're seeing the movie, then that's when John felt bad, and then he went to go talk to Lana, and I'm just like, I swear I cannot wait for the scene for John Henry Irons to actually have sexual relations with Lana. Like I don't know why, but I'm waiting for that specifically. But then so he felt bad. He goes to Lana's office to try to talk to her and try to get some advice. And then even the assistant, like the Asian assistant, when John came into the office and the assistant left, she looked at Lana and she was like, oh my God, like, like he's so fine or whatever the case may be. So now the seed has been planted. Like, even if the thoughts were there and Lana just never acknowledged them, it's like now, because she had the run-in with Chrissy earlier, and now that her assistant had actually made the comment about John Henry Irons being an attractive man, that seed has now been planted in this woman's head, and now she wants to. And it's funny because John was talking to her about his daughter and like the date and everything, and you could tell like Lana was thinking like other shit. But then she was just like, listen, she said like dating's new for her. She was like, you gotta like hold it together and like, be the cool dad. They have this whole conversation. She talks him off the ledge. She talks him to being the cool dad and being accepting and trying to get to know this boy. The two of them, I think the two of them actually had dinner together, because when they were walking through town, Lana had made a comment about how his food is so good he needs to open a restaurant. And I feel like that's going to happen for some reason. But then, so I was just like, did he cook for Lana? Like, did the two of them have like a lunch date that we didn't see on camera? Go on the CW app. Rewatch this episode on the CW app, because there's deleted scenes, like scenes that don't get to air on the CW because of commercial, because they got to keep it in like in a 60-minute window. there are scenes that don't air on television, but when you rewatch the episode on the CW app, the scenes that got cut out of the episode, they're put into the CW app. I promise you there is most likely a scene of Lana and John having dinner together. So then John sees Natalie actually kissing Mateo, and then he loses his shit, and then Lana grabs him. She was like, bro, we literally just talked about this. And then she talks him down. They go over, and then he ends up having a conversation with Mateo. He's like, yo, bring your ass over here, boy. And then he was like, look, he said, my daughter's never had a boyfriend before, which means you're my boyfriend too. And I was like, okay. But he was just like, listen, he said, I could tell you're a good kid. And then Mateo even said to Natalie, he was just like, listen, he's like, your dad doesn't, he said, although your dad scares me, he's like, I'm gonna kill him with kindness. And then that, and the thing is, like, John knows that game, because he's just like, look, he said, I understand that you have this need to want to say the right thing all the time, but he was like, look, I know the game, but he's like, I can tell you're a good kid, and I'm gonna do everything in my power to try to calm down so you can date my daughter and prove that you're worthy of being, with her. So then he's just like, he's like, you won't regret it, sir. The two of them were talking. Natalie ended up talking to Lana. She was like, it's just like my dad just trying to sabotage this whole thing. But then Lana said, she was like, you got to cut your dad some slack because this is new for him too. And then that's when she saw Sarah and Chrissy coming out of the movie theater, and the two of them were like laughing and joking because Sarah found out that Chrissy does edibles, like she's into marijuana. She goes to Coachella, and Sarah's like, wow, she might actually be cool. So the two of them were like laughing and getting along and everything. And then when Lana saw her daughter getting along with her ex-husband's new girlfriend, she got upset, and then she stormed off and went home. So she's home. Sarah comes home and she's like, yo, mom, she's like, I saw you, like in town. Because Sarah saw her when she walked away. She was like, mom, like, I saw you. She's like, what's really good? And then she was just like, oh, I don't know, honey. Ever since the divorce, it seems like everybody's moved on. What did you think was going to happen? You divorced this man. Like, you divorced. Like, Lana does not have the right to feel some kind of way. I understand he's your ex-husband, and seeing him with another woman and seeing the woman is awkward for you. But this was your idea. You chose this. You chose, like, Kyle didn't want the divorce. Like, Lana wanted the divorce. So you got to suck it up, Buttercup, because this was happening. Like, the man is allowed to move on. It's the same way how you're allowed to move on with the Iron Man. So then, then Sarah was just like, look, she was like, look, mom, if there's something that she's like, what you need to do, she's like, you need to live in the moment. She's like, what's something that you want to do right now? And then she was just like, your father left fireworks. And then she was like, I actually just want to like let the fireworks off and just say, fuck it all. So the two of them grab the fireworks. They go to some random place to go shoot them off. Meanwhile, back at the Kent farm, Jonathan ended up apologizing to his daddy. Lois had a conversation with both boys. And then while Jonathan and Clark were having their father-son conversation, the fireworks that Lana shot went off. And then Jonathan was like, who the hell did that? And then Clark used his like X-ray, like, super sight. And then he was like, oh, that's actually Lana. He's like, and Sarah for some reason. But, and then they just watched the fireworks, and then it was all gravy. And then that brings us to the end. So now at the end of the episode, Bruno Mannheim and Pia, they're back home. And while they're back home, Pia, she's like, still weak from the cancer treatment. And then Bruno was just like, I got you, baby. He was like, whatever you need, I'm here for you. And then their son came home, and he was just like, mom and dad, and then Pia was just like, oh, she's like, honey, did you have a good time on your date? And then he was like, yeah, mom. He was like, yo, this girl is great. I think she's going to be the one. And then when he walked into the room, surprise, surprise, it's good old Mateo, like I said. Mateo was Bruno Mannheim's son. And now the show can begin. And I will say this because, like I said, I called Mateo being Bruno's son. I called Pia being his wife, but I didn't get a chance to call that before the review went up. But I did catch that before the reveal of him being his wife. The one thing that they stumped me on is her being a meta. I didn't see that one coming, and I didn't expect his wife to be the person behind the mask, because here's where it gets confusing. This is why I say this is where the show gets to start. It is confusing as hell for everybody, because now, not only are we going to get a scene where Lois is going to tell Natalie to stay away from that boy, and she's going to be like, you're not my mom. But now John Henry Irons has to have an uncomfortable conversation with his daughter after he just said he was going to be the cool dad and he was going to be open-minded to the situation, because the boy that his daughter is dating, his parents murdered his version of John Henry Irons on this earth. And he's just like, you're dating the son of the people who technically murdered me. So that's going to be uncomfortable. And when Pia sees Giant Henry Irons, she's going to be like, holy shit, you're dating the daughter of the man who I killed. You're dating his like father's doppelganger. It's going, and meanwhile, for some reason, Bruno Mannheim doesn't seem that bad now. So this is going to be a complete mess. And for the love of God, I'm here for it. I'm waiting for it. I need it. I need my Superman and Lois. And thank you for tuning in. I'm looking forward to next week's episode because this is going down. Because the next week's episode, Natalie actually meets the parents, and it's gonna be some shit. And I'm here for the shit, and I'm here for all of it. Like I'm here for the smoke, and we go. Oh, it's gonna be a good one. But share your questions, comments, and/or concerns down below. Give me my flowers for calling Mateo. What did you think about this particular episode of Superman and/or Lois? Share your questions down below so we can talk about it. Hit the notification bell. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Give me a like, share, comment, all that crazy goodness, because we got a lot of good stuff coming up this week because Titans is out this week, and we got The Flash. The Flash was really good. Like, damn. The Flash was so good, I almost did my review for The Flash first before Superman and Lois, but I'm trying to keep the continuity. But the Flash review is coming, so check that out right behind this one, because we're going to keep rolling on for all the superhero goodness. So like I said, guys, thanks for tuning in. Another week in the book for Superman and Lois, and until next time, forever and always, we're out this.